Hello everyone. So let's start the class today. In the previous classes we had talked about how to write an SRS, right? So we looked at how to structure the SRS and how to give the numbers and all that stuff. Now SRS document is a document which consists of all the requirement specifications in a particular order, right? But the most important feature of the SRS document is to organize the requirements in a proper way so that we can have a better understanding of all the requirements. So there are scenarios, there are different ways by which we can structure the SRS, and I have also told you exactly how to structure it. But SRS document can also have very complex processing logic, right? So even if you have some kind of a structuring to all the requirement specification, we are still using textual sentences, and it becomes difficult to understand the textual sentences. So an SRS document can contain some kind of a diagrammatic representation of the requirements also. So we can have something called as a decision tree, right? A decision tree is nothing but it's a way of representing a complex processing logic using some kind of a graphic. Alright, so that's what we're going to discuss today. So we are going to look at how to actually create a decision tree, what exactly is a decision tree, and then we will see how we can easily represent a very complex processing logic using a decision tree. So let's go and understand what this decision tree is all about. Okay, so first thing, decision tree, right? It is used to represent any complex processing logic, okay, using a graphic view. Now a decision tree normally consists of two things. The first one is the edges. Okay, so the decision tree consists of edges, and the second thing, it consists of the leaf nodes. Alright, now what exactly are these two? I will discuss. So edges basically consists of all the conditions. What exactly are these conditions? I will tell you. And leaf nodes are nothing but they are the actions that need to be performed. Now when you look at a requirement specification, right, when we talk about the business logic is not a very straight logic wherein you just have instructions on things just to do, but we have lot of requirements, lot of actions that we need to perform based on certain conditions. Now if you have learned programming language, and I'm sure that all of you know it, right, you have done if then else programming, right? If then else statements. What are if then else statements? So basically if then else statements are statements which they are also called as branching, which involves kind of making decisions, which involves doing work based on certain conditions. For example, if the age of a student is less than 25, then do this, otherwise do this. So the age of a student, right, age of the student less than 25 is a condition. And what we need to do, okay, what we need to do if the age is less than 25 or greater than 25, all these statements are related to the actions that you need to perform. Okay, so decision tree is a graphic representation of complex processing logic which involves actions and conditions. Alright, and edges of a decision tree represent the conditions, and the leaf nodes represent the actions to be performed. And in short, a decision tree gives a graphic view of logic involved in decision making and the corresponding action that needs to be taken. So let's draw a decision tree so that it's easy for us to understand. So let's take a case study. So we are going to look at a case study, right, for a library management system, because that's what we have been doing. So let's say a library management system has got certain requirements. What requirements it has? It has basically, so many different functionalities. Obviously, library management system will have lots of functionality, but we are focusing on only a member renewal process. That means anyone can be a member of that library. So there are three different requirements for membership. One is we can have a new member who can join the library for the first time. Right. So there could be some requirements related to a new member, and there could be an existing member who would want to renew his membership. So we could have something as a renewal. Okay. And there would be a third category wherein a person who is already a member wants to cancel his membership. So let's say he wants to cancel membership. All right. So let's say these are the three different conditions that we're going to look at. Now this is a requirement which will involve basically some, this will involve some conditions and the actions specific to those conditions. So let's say when we talk about new member, right, what could be the requirement for the new member? So let me just, state those requirements to you. So let's say when the new member option is selected, so obviously it's a library management system. So you would have, different options on the home page of a library management system. So for example, if the new member option is selected, suppose this is the new member option, right? The software should ask the details about the member name. That means if you want to register as a new member, you have to give the name, address, phone number, etc. And that's what your system is going to ask you. Now, if you enter the proper information, then what happens? A membership record for that new member is created. That means you will have some kind of record which is created in the system, and also how much you have to pay for it. Probably a bill is printed for the annual membership charge, plus the security deposit and all the other details which you are not worried about. But in a nutshell, when a new member option is selected, some information is required from the user. System pops up a screen which you have to enter all the details, and then after you enter the details, and if the entered details are correct, then a record is actually created in the system, and you get a bill printed for the amount that you have actually been charged. Right, so that probably is one of the kind of requirements for a new member. Now assume that a new member option is done, and we have a second option of renewal. So if the renewal option is chosen, the library management system will ask the member's name, right? Because if you have to renew, you must be a member of that library. So obviously the membership needs to be checked whether you already are a member of the library or not, because only if you're a member, then your renewal of your membership can be done, right? So the system will definitely ask for his name and his membership number and check whether he's a valid, or he or she is a valid member or not. And if the name and the membership number which is entered is valid, then what happens is you are renewed. That means the expiry date is actually changed, is updated. And then you will also be given a bill, which is the next year's membership amount bill, right? And if something goes wrong here, and if you're not a member, and if something goes wrong, then obviously an error message will be displayed. The error message will also be displayed in new member if he does not enter his details properly or anything. So error message is a message which is a very common message which is displayed in any kind of functionality. Let's talk about the third one. The third one is the cancel membership. Now, if the cancel membership option is chosen, right, then the name of the valid member is entered. Because, if you have to cancel also, you need to validate whether the person who is coming or who wishes to cancel his membership, right, he is a valid member of that library. So obviously a validity check is going to be required here, and the name of the valid member will be entered, and the membership number also probably could be entered. And if it matches, and if everything's fine, if the data entered is fine, then the membership will be cancelled. And probably a check for the balance amount. That means if he has the membership for 1 year and he's cancelling it within 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, then the refund would be initiated. That means a bill would probably be printed, and the membership record would be deleted, and his refund of how much he will be probably getting will be given to him as a bill. So if we kind of correlate or collate all these requirements which I have just discussed, right, and draw a diagram to represent this complex requirement using a decision tree, how would it look? Right? So I'm going ahead and I am drawing a diagram to show how this requirement can be represented in the form of a decision tree. So just follow what I am drawing on the screen. First thing, we will need to have a user input, right? So this is the option that the user will select. Then there would be conditions. So let's say I have my first condition as new member. So new member is my first condition, and for this there would be certain set of actions. Second would be the renewal. So let's say RENEWL, renewal is my second option. Okay, the third one is the cancellation. So let's say I want to cancel the membership, and the fourth one, if I enter an invalid option, that means in any of the cases above, if I enter any invalid option, then I will have to do something, right? That would be an action to be performed, right? So this is condition number 1, condition number 2, condition number 3, and condition number 4. Now all of this together will form the conditions. Okay, so these are the conditions. And what are these conditions? Basically, this is called as, I told you that when you talk about a decision tree, it has got two things. One of them is it has got, a leaf and the edges. So these edges of a decision tree represents the conditions. So this is called as an edge. So what I have just drawn, this box, is an edge. And then we have the leaf node, right? So we will create the leaf node. So now the leaf node is created by writing all the actions that need to be performed. So let's say the first case is when a new member option is selected. So what we need to do? First we need to get the details, right? So first thing is get the details. So that will be the one requirement. So you don't have to write the requirement completely in full, but you can just write a summary of what needs to be done. What will be the action summary? Second one is, after we get the details, we obviously have to create a record. So in the system, a record will be created and print receipt. These are the three actions that need to be performed. In case renewal option is selected, then again we need to get the details, because it's important to get the details all the time, because we need to validate whether the details are correct or not. And then we need to update. In this case, we need to update the records. So update, we can just write update records, right? And in the third case, we again print a receipt. So if you look at it, there are some common functionalities here. Printing of receipt, getting the details. These are all common functionalities. Once again, in case of cancellation also, we get the details, right? And then what we do, we print the check. That means what is the CHEC? Let me just rewrite it. CHEQU. We print the check, the refund check, and we go ahead and delete. We delete the record. In this case, the record is deleted. And in the fourth option, if an invalid option is selected in any of the cases, right, then we need to print the error message. Okay, so here we are, we print the error message. Now what we have just done, these are the actions which need to be performed when the following conditions are met. Now these are the conditions, these are the leaf nodes. Okay, so these represent the actions, and this is the condition. So this is called as an edge of a decision tree. So what we are drawing here is decision tree, and in a decision tree, these conditions are the edges and these actions are the leaf nodes. Okay, so this entire complex requirement can be represented in a very easy and a summarized way, right? Or I can say that a graphic way. So if you look at this in a nutshell, I can quickly correlate as what exactly is the requirement for a new member. So I can say, if the user selects a new member, then he has these three requirements: get details, create the record, and print receipt. So rather than reading complex lines and paragraphs of text, right, it's easier to understand and represent such conditional complex processing logic in the form of a decision tree. I think this is very simple to understand, right? In case you still have any problems, then if you have any doubts related to this, you can always ask me once again and I will explain it. Okay, now in this decision tree, if you notice, obviously it's very simple to understand and simple to draw, but if you notice, then there are some requirements which I have to write again and again and again. For example, let me just change the color of my pen. For example, if you look at this get details, right? These are requirements which are being repeated again and again. For example, printing of receipt, printing of check. Okay, this is fine. If you talk about printing of receipts, printing of check, or get details, these are requirements which are getting repeated. We are writing it again and again. So there is another form of representation which will take care of these redundancies, and then that will help us in understanding the same requirements in a tabular form. Okay, so there is something called as a decision table. What does a decision table do? The decision table basically can represent the same information that we have discussed here, but in the form of a table. And that also gives a very clear picture of the complex processing, logic, which consists of conditions and actions. Okay, so let's talk about the decision table and we will see exactly how decision tables can be drawn. Okay, so a decision table, once again, can represent complex processing logic, right? It can check which conditions, basically are true. The order in which decision making is performed, that is also we can specify in the decision table. A decision table is basically a table in a tabular form which shows the processing logic and the corresponding actions that need to be performed for the various conditions. So same thing, it's just like a decision tree, but in this case we have something in a tabular form. Okay, so let's draw the same requirement as a decision table, and then it will be easy for us to understand. Okay, now the first important thing is, in a decision table, when we go ahead and draw a decision table, the first thing is the decision table is divided into two different parts. In the first part, you will have to specify the conditions. That means the upper rows of the table will consist of the variables or the conditions which need to be evaluated. So let's say that upper row, that means let's say that these are the conditions. So first I need to specify the conditions. Okay, and in the lower part we will write all the actions specific to those conditions. So for example, what were my conditions? So if you go back and have a look at the decision tree, my conditions were new member, renewal, cancel and invalid. So let's write those conditions down once again. Okay, so let's write those conditions. So my condition was, first was, let's say, valid selection, then new member. Sorry, I made a mistake here. Okay, this was my condition. Then we had a renewal, and the last one was cancellation. Okay, so these four were my conditions, and I told you the second part, that means in the second part of the decision table, the lower rows, we need to specify the actions that need to be taken when the corresponding conditions are satisfied. So let's write the actions that need to be performed in the lower rows. So here we will write actions. Okay, so actions will be performed in the lower row. So I need to write all the actions here. Now, important thing here is, in my decision tree, I had basically, lots of actions which I had specified here, and they were repeated, like get details were repeated, and then print receipt was repeated once again. But in this example, that means in my decision table, I don't need to repeat those actions. I can just write those actions once. That means, let's say, so what were my actions? So if I remember correctly, my first action was display error message. So let's write all of them down. So display error message. Okay, then we had get details, right? Then we had create membership record, right? Then we had generate receipt. Then we had what else we had? Update membership record. Update membership record. And we also had print check. And the last one was delete the record, right? So let's write delete record. Okay. Okay, so these were my actions that needed to be performed. Now it's very simple. So what happens in case of a decision table is I just have to represent every logic, every action and the condition in a tabular form. So let me just make this into a table first. Okay, so I have 4 conditions, so I will need 4 columns. Okay, let's start here. Although my lines are not straight, but I think you can understand. So let's say in the first scenario, if my valid selection is no, that means it is not a valid selection. If it is not a valid selection, then what should happen? A display error message action should be performed. So I will just go and tick that. Okay. Now, if my valid selection is yes, that means my selection is yes, and I have chosen a new member. That means if new member condition is validated. Now new member condition is validated only if the valid selection is yes, right? So if I'm choosing the option new member where I write yes, then for the new member, what are the different actions which need to be performed? So for the new member, I need to first get the details. I need to create a membership record. And then what I need to do is I need to generate a receipt. Done. Right? And in the third case, if I have a valid selection, and then in this case, it's not a new member, but it's a renewal thing. So I say yes, it's a renewal condition. So in case of a renewal condition, what are the different actions that I need to perform? I just need to, kind of tick them. So first thing is I need to get the details, right? So get the details is there with all of these. So I get the details. What do I do in the second case? In the second case, after I get the details, what do I need to do in the update? I need to update the membership record. So in case of renewal, I'm updating the membership record. And after I update the membership record, what do I need to do? I once again need to generate a receipt. So these 3 actions I tick. In the fourth option, let's say cancellation. So if it is a valid selection, and if we are choosing the option of cancellation, then what are the actions I need to perform? So obviously I need to get the details, right? That's there with each and every action. And after that, I need to print a check because that's going to be the refund. And finally, I delete the record. So by this table, you can see that all the earlier complex processing logic can be represented in a tabular form, and you can very easily understand what is happening here. So in an SRS, this decision table and this decision tree can help you represent complex processing logic in a more simple diagrammatic way. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this chapter number 3, which consisted of software requirement specification, software requirement gathering, and software requirement analysis. Now, when we kind of analyze the requirements, we know exactly what to do, right? We have to look at all the requirements. We have to first gather the requirements. after we gather the requirements, we actually need to analyze them. We need to filter out the requirements, and after filtering out the requirements, we need to structure it in a form of an SRS document by identifying the high level requirements, by grouping the requirements together into high level requirements which will form the module of the system. After that, we need to know how to kind of structure it in the SRS document, and if there are any complex decisional requirements like we discussed now, we have a liberty of representing them in a very graphic and a descriptive and very simple summarized form by using a decision tree or a decision table. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this chapter, and in the next class we will be looking at the design. Okay, so we will start with the introduction to design, but for now I hope you've understood this. In case you have any doubts, you can always come back to me and then we will clear it in the class, or you can also send me messages on WhatsApp or Google Classroom or anywhere else. Okay, so let's end the class today. I hope all of you have understood it well, right? So till we start the next class, see you. Bye bye.